Okay, it has been months, and I still have not made a new builds video with Skills 2.0. I think it's time now. I have 9 different builds currently right now using the new skill system that I really want to share. So yeah, let's talk builds. Most of these builds, as you're going to see, focus on different archetypes. I've got support builds, I've got builds that focus on damage, builds that focus on survivability, some of them mix of all of these. Then I've got some builds that focus on specific skill trees, I've got some that focus on specific weapon types, etc., etc. And you can really tell that that's what they were trying to lean into with Skills 2.0. It's a lot like Payday 2 in that regard, and I cannot I cannot say enough how much I really appreciate this compared to the skill line system that we had at launch. So let's go ahead and talk about some builds. I've got 9 of these today that I want to share. I might redo these in the future. If I do, I'll make a video showing that. If there's ever a new skill tree added, or if there's ever some kind of addition that changes up, like the current system in a big way, I might go back and revisit these. But I'm going to show just for now what I've made so that you guys can see and maybe even take some inspiration. I'll give tips on what to do with these builds. I'll say what I think they might be able to do in higher difficulties, as all of these are tested in the hard difficulty. I did not go much further than that. I am a complete casual when it comes to any game, so your results may vary if you play on overkill. But let's go ahead and get started. Had to start this off with something simple. Alright, let's be completely frank here. When we play games like this, sometimes we just want to turn our brain off, shoot a bunch of SWAT, and just, let the mission kind of play out on its own. And this is going to be a build that lets you do just that. This is essentially the vanilla ice cream of Payday 3. You drop ammo when you are low on ammo, although that should not happen because both weapons here have very good damage even without skills. With skills, which this build has, you should absolutely not be running out of ammo. I mean, you shouldn't even never have to switch off of the AK. Like, the pistol is basically just here as decoration at this point. Anyway, it also has skills for grenades that gives you a ton of them, as well as makes it so that you don't accidentally kill hostages. Of course, that'll happen if you just throw it where there's like a fire extinguisher or explosive barrel, so you will have to watch out for that. Otherwise, I would not worry too much about accidentally hitting yourself or your teammates or any civvies that might happen to be in an open area. If you don't like the AK, like if you prefer like the raw damage output of the SCAR, you could just switch for that. If you prefer the consistency and the high ammo count of the CAR 4, you could switch for that. But I do think the AK would be best for this build, considering it only takes like a few shots to kill most enemies. And on top of that, I just really like the look and feel of the AK, and this applies to almost any game. Anyway, you should not have a hard time running this build. If you want to make yourself a bit tankier, you could swap out the ammo skills for more armor, and you could even give yourself armor bags. You could switch the impact plates for resistance plates, just to give yourself better armor refill time. But I figured this build, the way I have it set up currently, would be the best, most well-rounded build for someone who is just starting out. Like I said, you could swap this out for the CAR 4 and you'd be doing pretty much just as well. Shotguns in Payday 3 might not be as overpowered as they were in Payday 2, just, inherently. but they are still very, very strong weapons. And no, you do not have to have the FSA. You know, it is not like super overpowered. At least I don't think it is. Like, I think it is a okay balanced weapon. Is it stronger than some of the other shotguns? Yeah, but the other shotguns have been like reworked to be a lot stronger now. Anyway, the rant aside, this build is basically, you know, what you see is what you get. You got a ton of shotgun skills to give you the most amount of damage possible. You've got armor skills to allow yourself to go room to room, tanking a bunch of damage. You've got flashbang skills, so you can throw a flashbang room to room and then just like take out targets in between. It also marks enemies for your teammates, so that's useful. The idea of this build is basically a breacher build. You go room to room, throwing your flashbangs when there's a big cluster of enemies, and just taking them out one target at a time. It's a really good build to actually train you to focus on individual targets, I feel. I know support builds are kind of redundant in a game like Payday, considering that like the game kind of encourages you to be somewhat self-reliant on your own build, but just hear me out on this. Having a support build in this game, just like in Payday 2, does help. There's a lot of moments where I find myself wishing, ah man, I wish someone had brought doctor bags, or like I wish someone had brought ammo bags, you know, like maybe I'd be running low on ammo on like a DPS build, or like maybe I'd be running low on ammo on a build that I didn't think I would need it with, like, you know, a sniper build. The point is, having like different people with different builds does matter in a game like this. Having some kind of team synergy does make a big difference when like heist starts to go wrong, basically. Anyway, so for this build, I focused purely on support. I picked a high damage sniper so I could pick off key targets, maybe even take out heavies from a long distance, you know, like the bulldozer, cloaker. And the doctor bag is there, not really for like me in this case, because I can pick up first aid kits, I can heal myself through dodge. The doctor bags are mostly there for my teammates. Same with, like, you know, having such a crazy amount of first aid kits, being able to pick up more consumables. It's also there in case I need to drop one for a teammate. And Payday 3 does have a few points on maps where you can just camp out as a sniper. Again, picking out key targets. Or like even marking them for your team so that they could go pick them out. Either way, this is almost purely a support build. If you wanted to, you could probably even spec even more into certain skills to give yourself better team support. Or you could just remove hostage trader skills entirely, like maybe you don't want to depend on consumables, but it's still really good to have. Like I said, you are not going to get crazy kills with this build. It is mostly just here to help the team. And yes, I do think more people should run builds like this. Like I said, it's one of those things where, like, you don't really need to have someone running a build like this, but trust me, when you've been in enough matches of people running support builds, you start to miss them when you don't have them. So yeah, just give builds like this a try, guys. You never know, you might actually be able to turn a match around. This build should have everything in it that you would need for either playstyle or stealth. However, it does focus mostly on unmasked stealth. And the reason is because I know most people do prefer to go about stealth that way. That's not what I personally prefer, but I get it. Most people like to stay unmasked because it does open up more traversal options, or at least in terms of like, you know, it allows for like more leniency in getting around the map and stuff. But anyway, it does include skills for if you do have to mask up, for instance. Like, just as an example, you get caught by a sieve. So this is just a run-of-the-mill, you know, stealth build that you could probably bring with you to pubs. If you do pubs in stealth, I would not trust randoms in a stealth heist, but I know a lot of people do try. Godspeed, I guess. Anyway, this build has everything you need to try to do stealth unmasked. It has some skills for masked stealth, just in case you need them. And yeah, there's not really much else to say with this build. Remember earlier when I said it was perfectly viable to just spec entirely into one skill tree category? Well, this is one such case. So with this, I was just like, fuck it, and I just spec entirely into the Commando skill tree. And as you can see, it is surprisingly effective. Basically, I just gave myself as much damage as I could with the LMG. And yes, I picked the LMG specifically in this case, and I'm sure you can see why. It's funny because the LMG isn't even that high a damage of a weapon. It doesn't even have that good armor penetration, but it just has so many rounds in the magazine, and it has so much armor pen with skills that you just literally are the bulldozer with this build. It's funny. It's normally such an underwhelming weapon, but with skills, it turns into an absolute beast. And you know what? I'm glad. This is really what the LMG should have been way back with Boys in Blue, and with Skills 2.0, now it really is like that. Anyway, ramble over. So it's basically just that. You've got basically maxed out armor skills, you've got armored bags to keep yourself going, and with the amount of damage reduction you're getting from both the resistance armor plates as well as your skills, like, you are just not going to be going down anytime soon. And on top of all of that, you have flashbangs for just in case you feel like you're about to like see one of your armor plates break, or like if you think you're not going to survive like a bunch of SWAT incoming, you have like 3 flashbangs, and you even have a skill to be able to pick up flashbangs off the ground, so, you know, as long as you're not going too crazy, you can just go ahead and use them whenever. Anyway, yeah, there's not much else to say here. This is basically just, what if you were to become the bulldozer? You know, every Payday like player has done this at some point, and I guess this is my way of doing that. I've been heavily getting into Red Dead Redemption lately, and I thought I'd make this build to just kind of I don't know, indulge in like the whole like cowboy fantasy. Anyway, just something about lever action like rifles and shotguns as well as like revolvers. It's just been hitting different lately. Anyway, this build is focused on moment-to-moment action, similar to my Breacher build earlier. Unlike that build, this one, it leaves you with a lot more mobility. You're actually able to run room to room. You have a rifle in this case instead of a shotgun, which means hopefully more long-range viability. And also you have access to the ricochet skill, which hopefully would allow for a better crowd clearing. If that doesn't work, you could always just swap the revolver out for or shotgun. You could swap the revolver out for a regular pistol to give yourself more ammo in the mag, or you could swap to, I don't know, maybe a shotgun if you're really struggling that much with crowd clearing, like maybe if your aim isn't very good and you just need to be able to hit more targets. This build probably would be better on mouse and key. Like if you're playing on PC, then this build might actually fit you better than me. I just really wanted to do something with revolvers in this game since I've been enjoying them a lot more as of late. One thing I should probably mention, just in case it's not clear, because this is like a little bit out of the norm, I guess. The reason I put the resistance plates first on the armor lineup instead of the impact plates was because really with this build, the resistance plates are disposable. Like you are not going to be able to preserve the resistance plates for long, or if you do, it's meant to be like, how do I put this? The impact plate is the crux of this armor setup. The resistance plates are not meant to be there for long, so what I would recommend is while you have the resistance plates up, go ahead and indulge with the lever action rifle, and then when the resistance plates finally break, switch to your revolver to take advantage of overheal. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean. You have to kind of get used to not having armor plates with this build. It's also why I didn't set this up with an armor bag and rather set it up with an ammo bag so you could have access to more flashbangs. Of course, if you ever run out, then you could always just wait the 15 seconds for the 3-plate armor vest to just give you another. Which, by the way, is another reason why I picked the 3-plate over, like, say, the 1-plate armor. Because, yeah, the 1-plate armor would give them more health and armor would regen faster, but with 3-plate, you can always ensure that you have a flashbang, which, in my opinion, not only fits the theme of the build better, you know, going room to room, going target to target, and it helping with crowds, but it also at least seemingly gives better survivability as far as I can tell. It also reminds me specifically of Cassidy from Overwatch, so I guess that was another reason to run flashbangs instead of, say, throwing knives, for example. If you wanted to, you could probably switch out the flashbangs for throwing knives if you prefer that. That would actually probably be more in line with Red Dead. Or you could swap out the lever action rifle for a shotgun, as I suggested earlier. There is a shotgun in the game that does very closely resemble like a sawed-off shotgun that you would see in like the Old West. So there are options to kind of tweak this around to your specific playstyle, but I ended up going with it this way just because, I don't know, just something about the way I have it set up right now just really clicks with me. This is probably the build I've had the most fun making. I'm sure you can tell. It wouldn't be Payday without sentry builds. Anyway, this is another one I actually had a lot of fun playing around with. Not necessarily making, I mean, it kind of made itself, right? Like sentries, you kind of have to spec all into anyway to get the most out of them. ECM jammers, you know, while they're not like the best thing ever in this game, they are still kind of useful for just getting certain objectives made easier, like, you know, delaying die packs so they don't go off, or like helping to open ATMs quicker, stuff like that. There's actually a ton of really underutilized uses of ECMs in this game that I hardly ever see people use. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of things you can use ECMs for, even without skills. And with skills, it helps for a bunch of other stuff like crowd control. But anyway, it's up to you whether or not you want to respec into ECMs. you probably have to give up some of your weapon damage that I spec into. Thankfully, the weapons I picked here, well, okay, the strike is still dog shit even with skills, what am I saying? God, man, they really butchered the strike in this game. Anyway, the UMP in this game is pretty good. You shouldn't necessarily need damage skills for it, but it does help. Of course, if you don't have the DLC for the strike, you could probably swap it out for, let's say, there's a Commando, or you could probably swap it for the MPX. Either way, there are SMGs you could get that are also fairly good without skills. You could also switch for the Car 4 and just get headshots. That's a pretty good way to substitute. Anyway, either way, you want to try to pick weapons that are good enough without skills. And that'll just take mostly trial and error. Revolvers are pretty good pistols to carry around, since if you headshot with them, it's a one-shot. Anyway, shot grenades, you'll get plenty of as long as you stand near your sentries. You stand near them for long enough and you will eventually get some shot grenades back. As for the armor choice, the reason I chose the 2-plate was twofold. One, just like the weapons, you don't necessarily need skills to make 2-plate armor that good. It's pretty much good on its own. And on top of that, it does give you more ECMs. You know, it gives you +1 ECM, which you can then use for certain stuff on the heist. So yeah, this build is a little bit, it's not so much that it's complicated, it's just that it does take a lot of getting used to a more like stationary playstyle. Most people are used to running around and getting a bunch of kills. With this build, you kind of have to set up shop in one spot and then kind of just set up a fortress, basically. I would, though, recommend swapping out some skills to get more sentries. So, like, either get one more if you want to just, like, have 2 sentries, or honestly, you should probably ace that skill and get 3 of them, because, like, you know, yeah, they'll overheat quicker, but as long as you keep them topped up, then they should be fine. So, yeah, this build is just really good for setting up, like, basically a camping spot. So, like, if you know a heist is mostly going to be centered around a central point, this is a good build to bring for that. I would not recommend bringing this build to a place where you know everyone's going to be, like, constantly moving. For instance, No Rest for the Wicked, as much as I like having ECMs on that heist to help with the die packs, for one, the heist was just recently reworked so that, you know, there's only 4 die packs instead of 8, so you should be able to get those as one person. But also, like, that heist, you're going to be running around like a lot, so it might not necessarily be worth it to bring sentries unless of course, everyone's going to be going for the deposit boxes. So, yeah, it's a good build, it's solid, it's very strong, but it basically depends on your willingness to stay in one spot. I think in a lot of games, DPS is a very misunderstood role. Like, whenever I'm playing Marvel Rivals, I swear to God the people who pick DPS have no idea how to actually do it. There's actually a lot of real-time strategizing that happens when you, like, properly play the role. Everything from, like, the positioning to, like, knowing which targets you can go for, which ones to just avoid. You know, actually being able to keep track of your teammates so you can, like, run in and help them when they're overwhelmed. Like, there's actually a lot of, like, thinking that goes into it. And this is basically that as a Payday build, right? It's essentially a glass cannon. You're running around with 1 plate armor. You've got a very high damage weapon that you need to reload fairly frequently. And because all of these are, in theory, strengths, but in practice, weaknesses, I've also basically given it extra dodge from smoke grenades. That is a skill you can have in this game, and honestly, it's basically just Sicario in that regard. Anyway, I digress. This is your resident DPS build. Find a crowd of enemies, point your weapon to them, throw down smokes so that either they can't hit you or you just dodge their shots, and just basically go to town. The trip laser pretty much doesn't need any skills to be useful, but it is very useful here because you can basically set up a choke point. This build doesn't have any way of getting new trip lasers, so you will have to be very careful where you put this one. Like if you place the trip laser in a bad spot, there's no picking it back up, there's no getting a new one from like the taser or anything, so you're just gonna have to basically pick a spot, throw down the trip laser, and then deal with wherever it is. But thankfully, that's not the main focus. The main focus is your smoke grenades, it is your SMG, and your pistol is basically there just a backup. So yeah, you really aren't going to need your pistol, although it is good to have because SMGs do tend to burn through ammo if you're not careful. Anyway, if you want to run around even quicker, you could take out some of the skills, like maybe your ammo skills, and then instead place them into the top dodge skill, being able to run and shoot at the same time. If you need more like healing, you could probably swap out, for throwing knives instead and spec a bit into that as a way to heal, but you really shouldn't need it. You've got tons of dodge with this build, you've got tons of mobility, you should be able to take advantage of cover, and on top of that, there's just so much ammo you're going to be flinging around everywhere that, like, you get it. It's a DPS build. Anyway. But, yeah. And this is just another build that kind of made itself. Like, you can tell this was an archetype that Starbreeze leaned into when they were designing the skill trees. Basically, all I did was I gave it ammo bags so that you had it in a pinch, and you could also refill your throwables using these ammo bags. I threw in the trip laser as an alternative way to mark targets, so that, even if you don't kill them, your team probably could. So yeah, it's a DPS build. You just focus on setting up choke points and crowd clearing so your teammates can focus on the heist. But yeah, not really much else to say. This is basically the build that you bring when your teammate knows what to do and when they've basically got the heist covered, and you're basically just there for crowd clearing. Of course, if all else fails and you do need to do some objectives, you should have plenty of smoke grenades, and if you run out of those, you can just stack up more using your ammo bags. Something I wish more people did in Payday 3 Stealth was have, like, some players masked up and actually, like, running around doing what they can in a heist, and then have some people unmasked doing what they can, and basically, like, sort of in, like, a sort of collaborative effort where, like, people are playing stealth differently. This was actually fairly common in Payday 2, surprisingly. Like, you would have at least one player unmasked just going around, like, marking guards, like, marking cameras, all that, while the players who were masked up would actually be going around doing objectives. And I think to an extent, this was kind of what Starbreeze wanted with Payday 3, right? Where, like, some people would be playing unmasked, where they'd be going around, like, interacting with civs, distracting guards, actively doing stuff in the heist, while people unmasked would be going in the more, like, locked down areas. I think this was what they originally intended, but that's sadly not how people ended up playing. And what I'm trying to do with this build is encourage people to try that. Masked up stealth in Payday 3 is just as fun as unmasked. It's its entire own playstyle, and it is more reminiscent of classic Payday 2 stealth. And I think more people should try to mix it up like this, right? And it's just, I don't know, it feels like a big missed opportunity for a lot of players. In fact, this is actually something I plan on doing with Sean if I can get him to hop on again. So yeah, definitely consider giving this a try. Alternatively, you could probably spec fully into unmasked stealth. Like, you know, instead of like specking into like hacking skills, maybe you spec into throwing knives and, you know, like adrenaline and stuff, you know, to be able to do stuff unmasked. Or you could, you know, take more of a spin on this build where actually you put throwing knives on this to like distract guards. Where like maybe the unmasked player, like, you get it, like basically mix things up, right? Like, you know, count more on that collaborative effort. Like, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be a co-op game. And, you know, people of various playstyles all mixing in their efforts. And that definitely should, at least in my opinion, also apply to stealth. Really, that's all I'm trying to do with this build, is just convince people to sort of mix it up a bit more. And at the end of the day, like, I can't, like, dictate to people how to play. Like, you know, it's a co-op game, yes, but like it does also try to accommodate solo players, and I get that. But I think more people should consider those other options. It's why I threw a support build in the midst earlier, because, you know, while the support build isn't, you know, needed, like we don't need a support build, it's still really good to have, right? Like, you know, you never know when someone might need a first aid kit or a doctor bag and they might not have it. Or like maybe someone needs like an armor build armor build. Someone might have like an armor build and maybe they run low on ammo. So having ammo bags would be useful. Like, I get that people often want to play solo, but, you know, especially in stealth, there's like so many things that co-op players could be doing that I think they just don't even think about. And that's what I'm trying to encourage with this build. Okay, I think that is every build I have made thus far. I still have one empty build slot, and I think what I might do with that one is I'm just gonna mess around with that one, and anytime I make like a new build, like trying something else, I'll probably make it there, and then who knows, maybe I'll make more build videos in the future. Now that I've calmed down from my initial burst of energy when starting this video, I want to say that I am honestly astonished that Starbreeze was able to cook up something like this. I've had like 10 times as much fun just messing around with skill trees in this build of the game versus the skill lines from launch. And as I said, giving credit where it's due, I am really glad that they've made Skills 2.0. At this point, it's just a matter of Starbreeze making consistent updates, which I think they've actually done a lot better at recently, and we'll wait and see. They have also said they're going to be releasing a new weapon pack soon. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll actually get the fucking RPK that we've been teased for like, what, a year and a half now? Anyway, I believe there's also a mention of a new overkill weapon, which appears to be, if I'm looking at the devlogs correctly, an RPG, which is actually something I wishlisted. So, yay, one of my wishlist items. Anyway, so yeah. Also, leave in the comments, talk about what kind of builds you guys have been making. I'm very curious to hear, because, like, there's so much room for skill expression with these new, like, skill trees, and I am very curious what people have cooked up. So, like, tell us about the kinds of builds you've made. But that's it for now. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. I'm out.